You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a History of Comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Mr. P, a 2012 album released posthumously by the great Patrice O'Neal. This is our yearly homage to Patrice, the man that this show is named after. Why You Laughing is a term that he used in the legendary interview that he did with Fox News. And every year around this time, he died on November 29th, 2011. So every year around Thanksgiving. It's also around the date of Harassment Day, if I remember correctly.
Right.
The Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So every year around this time, we honor the great Patrice O'Neal. And this year I decided to do Master P, which is an album of...
Mr. P.
What did I say?
Master P.
Oh. Today we're covering the great rapper, Master P. No, Mr. P, of course. I might do that again before this episode is done. But
Yeah.
I would consider this album of the same quality as Elephant in the Room. I think I probably like Elephant in the Room a little more, but if you said that you liked Mr. P better, I'm not going to argue with you, which is pretty impressive because I'm not certain that Patrice wanted this out there. According to the things I searched online, Patrice planned on releasing this album after Elephant in the Room, so I guess it was in the works. To me, it seems a little strange to release a special filmed for Comedy Central, which at the time still had a little bit of cachet. They fell off pretty quickly and kind of hid their specials and couldn't keep up with the way that Netflix and YouTube ended up doing things. But at the time, having a special on Comedy Central still meant something. Mm-hmm. So a year later to release an audio-only album seems a little odd to me. Granted, like, the internet isn't what we know it to be now. Like YouTube specials and the way people release content, at that time, it wasn't what we now know it as. So I guess maybe that's just an old school way of doing things that Patrice did. Maybe you could find 15 more examples of around, 2011, 2012 of guys releasing specials, and then the next year or two they released just something on iTunes. It seems a little odd to me, and the only reason I question it is the way things were handled after Patrice's death. I think it was beige frequency. If not, I apologize. Whoever deserves credit, give him credit in the comments. But I think it was beige frequency who did a pretty good summary of some of the shady things that were done involving Vaughn DiCarlo, Patrice's girlfriend / basically wife at the time that he died, and the documentary and the GoFundMe that was involved with that and where the money went. The internet sleuths did a pretty good job of breaking that down. So that's the only reason I question, did Patrice intend to have this released? Because it's very quick after Elephant in the Room. But regardless, maybe that's for another episode that we'll do down the road. But neither here nor there for this one, because it is of album quality for sure. Like I said, Elephant in the Room I think is one of the greatest specials of all time. And Mr. P, you could definitely argue, is of the same level of quality. So we will get into that today. Rest in peace, Patrice O'Neal. And what he would want, what I believe Patrice would have wanted, is for you to go to blindmike.net and support this goddamn program. I'm pretty sure those were his last words before he slipped into a coma. He said, you don't know what blindmike.net is yet, but make sure you go to it in 13 years. So do that, will you? Become a member on Patreon or YouTube for as little as $5 a month. Get early access and bonus content. If you wish you were listening to this a week ago, then you could be. Just get on Patreon right now. Become a gearhead and support this program, or just support us for free. We appreciate that as well. Help spread the word by liking, commenting, subscribing. Leave a 5-star review wherever you get podcasts, or if you're on YouTube, make sure you comment, subscribe, tap the notification bell. All that stuff helps us in the algorithm, supposedly. It helps more people find this podcast. So do that, We appreciate you. And go back through the archives. We've done a bunch of Patrice episodes if this is your first time listening to one, a bunch of Opie and Anthony related episodes that involve Patrice as well. So if you're new to the program, go back to the archives and catch up on those. All right. So, like I said, upon a re-listen, I don't know if I ever truly realized how good Mr. P is. And right out of the gate, it kind of shows Patrice's brilliance. And we've talked about this with podcasting before, how the podcasting era is probably where Patrice really would have blown up. His strong suit was just talking. He was great on the radio forever. So it just seems natural that he would have had a massive podcast if he wanted to. The other thing that blew up in recent years is crowd work. And I would argue there's no one really better at crowd work than Patrice either. And that's evident by him easing into this special. This is just how he opens up this recording at the DC Improv.
Hey, you! Hey, you! She's a winner, ain't she, Pro? Yep. There you go, right up front. Big fans right up front there. Give it up for motherfuckers that's up here trying to make you laugh, don't know you. Yeah, whatever. What the fuck happened? That's your woman there? That's your one. Oh, boy. You guys brothers, right? You guys look just alike, man. Brothers? Related? Like just friend, like boys. Why'd you get all strange, nigga? Really, it's not a setup to fuck with you, man. I'm just asking what the deal is, man, because y'all are people. Like, it ain't like just fucking start dancing, motherfuckers. I gotta just get into my shit. I like to know who I'm here fucking trying to fucking make laugh and shit. What's going on here? Deliciously young here. What's going on? Who's with you? Nobody? Just you guys? Did you see her coming in, but you had to play it like... Oh, that's your woman there? Miss, do me a big favor. Do me a big favor. You don't think he deserves to look at them young, delicious titties?
It's amazing. Like within a minute and a half, he has a relationship with the entire audience. It's it's like incredible to listen to. He's like a comedy superhero to open this, because that's ridiculously tough to do. I think, to have people now. I mean, granted, it is probably majority his audience, but to have everyone fucking howling right out of the gate just based on crowd work is pretty impressive. And we live in a time where guys are blowing up on crowd work. Matt Rife, obviously, being the example, but I don't think there's anyone I've ever heard make a crowd as comfortable while also saying uncomfortable things. Like talking about the girl's tits in the front row and calling her deliciously young. On paper, that should walk half the room. Like that should be offending people. But he did have a charm about him. And like we've talked about this with Howard Stern too, where you hear guys now who are like, this is how Howard would have done it. Why are you criticizing me for doing it? And that's not an impression of anyone in particular.
Yeah, no.
Just general society. People say that. But Patrice has a skill that a lot of people like Howard had, where there was a charm to him. Well, I mean, granted, I'm glossing over a lot of people that probably were offended by Patrice, but he did have a charm to him and an ability to do that, where he could say things that in other settings might be deemed offensive or over the line or whatever. But Patrice just had charisma and a charm in a certain way about him where he could easily do that to an audience. And like I said, Patrice has walked a lot of people throughout his career as well. So I'm not saying that's every room. But when you hear, the other thing I loved about this album is, maybe this debunks my notion that Patrice didn't want this released, because it is recorded in a certain way that albums used to be recorded that I feel like they aren't anymore, or not enough, where if you're listening to this, you feel like you're in the room. Even though the sound quality isn't as good as it would be today, like you feel the way the audience is mic'd and you hear that laughter, the reaction in the room, you feel like you're part of it. And I think the way people release specials now, there's often times where, and this could be a symptom of just the audience not being mic'd properly, or it being recorded in a room where the audience doesn't know who the fuck you are. But like, there's times where it almost sounds like the comic is bombing, even if there's good material. Based on the audience reaction, you're like, oh shit, do they not find him funny? What's going on here? And you certainly don't have that problem in this album. It's constant laughter throughout.
Now, next we have Women's Age, so he's going right back to it.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, so he, like, you definitely see influence from Big J here, by the way.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
If you watch Big J's crowd work now, Jay opened for Patrice for a long time. They were good friends. And not just, like, people have commented on the fact that he sits on the stool the way Patrice did, but also you see definite influence in his crowd work, because this is a lot of Jay's act now, is stuff like this.
What you trying to hold on to? That's your man. Like, see, for me to ask you how old your age, that's like if I just meet you and I'm trying to get to know you. I'm just asking generally just to say, and then how old are you? 28. I see how fast. Because she knows she's deliciously young. All the old bitches, it's not right to ask a woman her age. Clear all that whole shit out your throat and understand. So don't get mad at him. What's your name, bro? Don't get mad at Derek if he needs that. That's something he needs to do. You don't even have your titties out. Like you all fucking Condoleezza Rice of this bitch. You have mad dignity. We need a little trollop out here with a nice, delicious little titties hanging out, sweet, juicy tits.
We're 3 minutes into the album, maybe less, and he's created and solved a problem in this couple's life. Like, he made up the idea that the husband was attracted to this young 28-year-old and checking her out, and then he solved the problem by talking, being like, "Hey, don't be ashamed of your age." You know, like he invented this problem and therapied them through it. But it is like, again, an amazing way, and he did that in Elephant in the Room too, where it's like this ability he has to relate to the audience right out of the gate and make, like, you know, people's names and occupations 3 minutes into this thing.
We're going to move here now to religion. We're going to talk about God.
All right, now we're getting into some actual material. And again, another thing about, and maybe it's just Patrice's style that I'm confusing for working on material, but like there's a lot of points in this album where it does seem like he's working on stuff where if he released it as a special, it would have been tighter. And maybe that's the feel he wanted to give the album. But he kind of like meanders, and then again, it might just be his genius to present it this way, but it almost seems like he stumbles upon a punchline by the end of this.
I can drive here. That's a big deal because I don't like to fly. No one likes to fly. I mean, I don't want to crash. Like when you think about that shit, that's just, you just go, I don't want to crash. You know, that's it. And so that's all I need really, to fucking not to want to fly. Because you see all the bad shit that can happen to you out of nowhere. Like you watch this fucking Japanese tsunami and you earthquakes and shit, and then you start to have to, like, you ever, look, you believe in God, I believe in God, but you ever have trouble giving a fuck about, like, shit that you're supposed to give a fuck about? And so you trying to work it out with God to just, like, you be like, this tsunami's terrible, and you're just like, oh my God, I can't, I cannot give a fuck about this shit. Because you love God. Look, you're not evil, but you're just like, God, send me a sign to let me know why I should give a fuck about this shit.
It is like that just appeals to like the darkness in all. Like that's something everyone has, whether you want to admit it or not. There's some stuff where it's like, isn't this terrible? And you're like, I just really don't have it in me to give a fuck, you know? But as human beings, we go, yes, no, oh, that's awful. But like, you're not actually feeling those feelings. You just know what you're supposed to say in those situations. And for Patrice to like bring that out of people. But like, did you notice that what I was saying, where it almost seems like he's stumbling into this idea, like, as if he's working on it.
He thought of it on the walk up to the stage.
Right. Like, and again, that might just be like Shane Gillis has that a little bit too, where there's a lot of people that if you don't know comedy, you're like, oh, it's crazy. Like Shane just has these ideas on stage. And it's like, no, it's actually like well-crafted material. So obviously Patrice has that ability. But like, as you listen to the album, you're like, is he just like coming up with these? Is he just stumbling into this idea of like negotiating with God over how to give a fuck about something?
Next we got Money.
This is like you again. I know we say it every time, but like what makes the timing of Patrice's death such a shame is he was really just finding his voice. Like when we did a breakdown of his old roast. And a lot of the jokes were making fun of Patrice's material, like him just talking about sex and doing easy crowd work. And it's amazing, like in his later stuff, you see him evolving into this guy who was a really deep thinker and would talk about a lot of the stuff that like a Dave Chappelle is talking about now. But the thing with Patrice is he always kept it funny. Would that have changed in 13 years? And the way the world has been over the last decade, maybe. But, like, he managed to get into these subjects and keep it funny. Because this is a time where, like, Bernie Madoff was a big scandal, the housing crisis a few years earlier. So this is a big deal and something Patrice obviously thought a lot about.
That's another thing, man. Money, I mean, I make money, but I don't understand it. I wish I was one of these motherfuckers that understood money, where... like people that see bad things happen, like earthquakes and shit, tsunamis. There's people that understand money that just start like jacking off when they see disasters. How many people died? Yeah. Death and destruction, man. You know they lining up in Haiti to see who gets to rebuild Haiti. You know that, right? Them corporations, man, they got pistols out having fucking, you know, at noon, fucking draws, see who gets to rebuild Haiti. And without Haitians and shit.
Like, it feels like a Bill Hicks type of talking point. But the way Hicks would present it would be like almost chastising the audience about this subject. Where like I think Hicks was funny, but like there are times when you listen to him where you're like, I don't control this, man. Like, what do you want me to do about it? Why are you yelling at me?
It's not me.
Where Patrice could talk about this stuff and navigate it in a wholly funny way, like get the same point across that a guy like Bill Hicks was making, but keep the laughs plentiful throughout.
But he's going to continue and talk about inflation.
Like, how many, even since this, how many guys have you ever heard with an amazing inflation chunk? But Patrice was able to pull it off.
Talking shit. You ain't gonna do shit. Gas is 4. The reason it ain't 5 is because we don't want you to revolt. So we go from 99 cents. You know they did that shit with sneakers. Sneakers was 40. Then it go to, this is how they play you. It go from 40 to 80. You go, all right, $80. Then it goes to 65. Then you go, it's still $25 more. But they fucked you hard, like, ouch. So your and you think they ain't fucking you. But gas was 99 cents, nigga. Now it's $4. Cause they got us ready for the fucking. It was little Vaseline. We should be killing motherfuckers, but they get us used to the fucking.
I think the only other guy I've heard pull off something like that is Bill Burr when he's talking about the banks.
Yeah.
Where you're talking about like a serious and pretty boring issue, inflation. Like
one that actually probably just pisses the audience off at the thought of.
If I went to when I was at Skankfest, I went to Jeremiah Watkins' Stand Up on the Spot show, which is it's exactly what it sounds like. The crowd yells out topics and the comedian's supposed to talk about them. If I yelled out inflation, I'd be booed out of the room. People would be like, what a bore. What a fucking loser. Who wants to hear a comic talk about inflation? But Patrice does it, and not just in a, like I said, a guy like Bill Hicks or even like Nick DiPaolo would do it in a way where they're like yelling at you. Mark Maron, same thing. Where they're like yelling at you about inflation. You're like, I didn't do it. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I hurt you.
Patrice and Burr have this ability to not only keep it funny, but also do it in a way that appeals to like a young audience. Like I listened to Mr. P when I would have been 20, 21, something like that.
Yeah.
And like, I don't give a fuck about the banking system or inflation or the economy or anything at that time. Yet I still found this funny because he delivers it in a way that morons like me can even find palatable. Where you're like, oh yeah, 40 up to 80 down to 65. Now I get what he's saying.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So yeah, like him and Burr had that ability to talk about big issues like that or very serious, boring issues in a way that is, you know, I'm still in the mindset of last week. Not to sound gay, but they keep it fun.
Now let's move on to a subject that's never been talked about: TSA.
But this is like it's done in a Patrice way, and that's why I threw it in there. Is like you said, it's been talked to death about, but Patrice does it in a way where you much like Louis. The example of Louis that's always cited is like people would say airplane bits are hack forever, and then Louis came up with an airplane bit that was truly genius. And I'm not saying this is that level, but it's like when you talk about an issue in a real honest way, it is still relatable no matter how many people have covered the subject.
I saw a fucking one of them. I was just watching shit. You know how sometimes you go through an internet journey and you start with something, then you end up like, and you're like, how the fuck did I get here, man? And the links be weird. It just be numbers and bullshit. The links. I can't even share this with people. But they was training the Mujahideen and shit. The God Warriors and shit. And it was two apples. It was apple there. This motherfucker had two AK-47s, and he didn't even look at the apples. He shot one, boom, boom, both apples, boom. I said, that's the motherfuckers who trying to kill me? And our first line of defense is a fat bitch. Hiding that she's a fat bitch. Like, it ain't like she's straight. And let me be honest, I'm a fat motherfucker. I should not be protecting your life. I love my laziness more than I love your life. I'm looking for always a way to lean or sleep when I'm supposed to be working, man. Take your belt off, please. That's the reason they tell you to take off all your fucking clothes, so you're naked, so they don't have to do anything. They don't have to work. They don't have to work. Take your shoes off, please. Put your computer to bed.
His insight on just like human behavior and human interaction, I think, is what drew people to Patrice. It's what made him so great on the radio. But it was also making him a great comic where he was able to talk about things from an angle where you're like, you haven't heard it exactly that way before, even if you heard the subject broached 100 times. And then he even gets into, like, the clip was too long. It didn't make sense to play as a clip. But he gets into a bit that I think is one of the better bits on the entire album about how, like, he knows what's going through his mind as a creep. Like if he sees a girl's ass crack peeking out of her jeans or something. Like I'm able to keep a straight face, but I know what's going on in my head. She's like, so how are you going to explain to me that there's not a single TSA agent like that? Like a guy who's just feeling my nuts and rubbing his hand at my thigh going, I know what I'm doing to you, motherfucker.
Great point.
And just like his ability to relate that to people. Like so many people have those thoughts, but for him to convey them in a way that is so like, yes, that's exactly what I've been trying to say, you know?
Yeah. Next we have reparations.
Okay, so this is an innovative idea. And Patrice was very consumed by race. It's a lot of what he talked and thought about. But no matter, like, at its core, you're going to hear this idea and say, of course, we can't do that. But when you hear Patrice break it down, he does it in a way where you're like, am I on board with this?
But see, people talk reparation. All right. I could get killed for this, but I'm going to say it. It ain't even funny either. It's definitely not going to be funny to white people. Or Latinos, or Asians, or Jews, anybody. Here's what reparations should be, simple. Because look, we are all slaves right now. We work so that we can pay a debt to the bank that the government got money from. That they're borrowing not on our behalf. So we are paying someone else's debt. So we are slaves to the government, who is a slave to the bank. Okay? I think black people as reparations, we can't get a pocket full of money. It makes no sense. Because niggas is just gonna. Here's what we do. Because here's what black people.
I'll pause real quick. Sorry. I don't know if you can hear it. Someone yells for real in the audience.
Trying to do to create wealth, like to become a wealthy people. Even though they'll be poor, there'll be some that are super wealthy. Like Oprah has a lot of money, but she ain't wealthy because it ain't from no tradition shit. She just lucky, so that's why she hanging on to that shit. Like she used to support Obama outwardly, but she did that shit, and all those white women that love her said, "Why I don't like you supporting this nigga so loudly, Oprah." So she quiet a little bit. But here's the reparations. I'm gonna back up. Since federal income tax is slavery, and we are all slaves, and reparations is an apology for slavery, the original slavery that we're talking about, black people should be exempt from federal income tax. I'm looking around, make sure a white boy, he didn't like that shit. He started biting his top lip. Because if you understand money, you shoot me in the head just for even thinking that shit.
It is because you're like, well, I guess he makes a good point.
It's the best idea I've heard on it.
It doesn't affect me in any way as an individual, I guess.
I mean, it would definitely make all of our taxes go up, but
Well, sure. But I'm saying in a perfect world, I guess.
Yeah.
But like, again, obviously that's not going to happen. But like, it is just a brilliant way of thinking where you're like, that's an outside the box way of thinking of that, as opposed to just reparations as an argument where it's like, just hand people money. There's no debate on it. Patrice approached it from an angle where you're like, people aren't going to like this. What about this? And you're like, okay, now we're talking. It gets the conversation started, you know?
that's right. Next we have race war, so it tones down a little.
So like it is, and the example I always use in an episode I thought about doing this year, but I thought let's save it till we've done more while Patrice was alive. But I want to do an episode on the funeral, essentially, of Patrice O'Neal that Opie and Anthony held the day after he died, when all the comics were on. A legendary episode of O&A.
Yeah, it was like the saddest, funniest thing I ever heard in my life.
Yes. And Louis was on there and talked about how Louis mentioned to Patrice that he wasn't attracted to black women. And Louis just thought it was like a preference thing. Like, I'm just not sexually attracted to them, typically. And Patrice spent the next hour pulling up like files and documents proving that Louis was gay. And it made Louis think, like, eventually, like, am I gay? What's going on here? And so he just has that ability to make his argument in a way where you're like, I don't want to agree with you, but I see where you're going, and it's starting to make sense to me. So this is, him talking more about race.
It's basically, here's the war. White people and black people at war. Then the other groups pick a side. Asians chose white. Latinos chose black, but they didn't choose us. They just want our spot as the top oppressed motherfuckers. You ain't getting it, nigga. I don't give a fuck how many babies you have. Latinos will be third of. I don't give a fuck. You're not getting at least our top oppressed spot, nigga. You can't have it. So they need us to be fighting. They need white people and black people to hate each other. Look, I would never, ever stand up here and say black people and white people should get together. Anybody who ever tried to do that and was close got fucking smoked. I don't even want to run down the whole thing. It's just if you were somebody that just... Let's go Malcolm X. When Malcolm X was like, you white dirty devils, blue-eyed evil. He was living a wonderful... Nobody fuck with him. But when he went to Mecca and came back, it was like, Jesus, man, everybody's my brother. I think we should all come. Nigga, get your hand on my pocket. And he got shot. As soon as he had some new way of thinking about people, he got killed, man. I'm not that nigga, man. I like living as long as I can live. But I think it is what it is, man. It might be a young soldier in here with some charismatic skills, man, that could run with that shit. I can watch you get shot and they be trying to figure out who did it. Was it the government? Was it a crazy cracker in the woods?
I mean, he did die months later, you know? That's not...
Yeah, the depressing thing is, like, you can just kind of hear it in the way he's breathing throughout this.
Yeah, I mean, butter and sugar didn't help, I'm sure. But, like, he did die months later, so... But, like, I remember, like, people used to call into Opie and Anthony when Patrice and Anthony would get into these topics and say, like, oh, Patrice is just as racist as Anthony, or Patrice is even more racist than Anthony. But, like, I do believe Patrice is a guy that was looking for solutions to his racism, you know? Yeah. Like, I think he definitely did. There was discrimination in his mind against white people. And I don't mean white individuals, but, like, as a conglomerate of white people. He definitely discriminated in that way. But, like, Patrice would look at ways to, like, how does society solve this? And he approached it from that angle, which I do think makes him such a genius, because you hear Dave Chappelle doing stuff like this today. But with Dave, it is always a lecture. Mm-hmm. It is a speech on how we get to these places. Where you hear there, Patrice is talking about this stuff. Like, at a Chappelle show, it would have been Malcolm X. It would have been the serious tone, where he talks about how Malcolm X was... He was an angry guy, and then he healed himself. And then eventually there'd be a punchline that was funny. But, like, in Patrice's rants about this stuff, there were laughs throughout. Like, he was funny first always.
It's funny for me to think, like, the Anthony Patrice battles back then. He got Anthony's Twitter feed before it was on his Twitter feed. Like, he heard that stuff probably when the mics were off.
Just in real life, yeah.
Next we have new racism.
Oh yeah, so okay, this is a different version of white people, and I think it held true, as a lot of the stuff Patrice talked about did.
And I'm gonna tell you something. White people want to get along with black people. Here's the thing. Here's what the main war is now. The two big war things. The reason black people don't like white people right now, and white people don't like black people right now. One, black people don't like white people because of this new type of racism. This shit I can't prove. Why I look at this fucking buzz cut head fucking in the army white boy here, and I'm just looking at him going, I bet this cocksucker's racist, but I could never. Can't prove it. Have you ever met a racist? I haven't. We agree there is racism. Is it racism? Yeah, absolutely. Are you racist? No. Well, please help me find racism. You gonna tell me the only racists are crazy crackers in the fucking hills somewhere? No. There's no regular good guy racist walking around this bitch. I'm a nice guy, but niggas, they just... No. Here's a dollar, you need it, but I don't like niggas like that. They bug me a little bit.
They bug me.
Tons of white friends like you, bro. You got white friends, right?
A couple.
A couple, but see how nervous that? But I got a lot of white friends, and I don't like their whiteness. But I like them as people, but their whiteness makes me sick, man. Just be honest. And here's what white people hate. That white people don't like that they have to answer to race. They don't like hiding racism. White people used to be able to walk around and go, I don't like niggas. I'm gonna hang one of you motherfuckers. Let me just decide.
It's so funny because it is, I think, the core of a lot of arguments now, like where people will call out racism and the person's like, well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm not a racist. I made these particular points, and sometimes they're right and they're not a racist and they just were making a societal point or whatever. But sometimes, like, since we talked about him, I'll use Anthony's Twitter, where it's like, sometimes it's like, I can't read all of this and be like, well, you're just not a racist, I guess, because you said you're not.
You can't really lean on I was friends with Patrice anymore.
Right, yeah. The man's been gone a long time. But it's such a funny point. Like, I've never met a racist because, back in the day, things were literally segregated. Like, people would say, I don't want these people in my neighborhood. Whereas now it's like, no, I'm bringing up statistics. What do you mean? And Patrice saw that before anybody.
Next we have names.
Oh, this is more crowd work, and it's just funny. He engages with someone who has a name that throws him off.
Like black women, there's this thing. Like I don't know, like how much people really know about. Like, do you see my man? What's your name, bro?
Tolu.
I'm trying to be all brotherly, but I'm like, nigga, Tolu. What you named after feet and a hula hoop? Like some goofy African name somebody named it. My mother did that same stupid shit. That's what Patrice is. Let me tell you something. You'll be watching. If it was up to one of my goofy ass 80-year-old aunts, I'd be Patrice O'Neal up this motherfucker. Your mom's went right through with it. Tulu, the man with 8 white friends. They can't even fully have you as a friend. What the fuck? They gonna introduce you to other white people? This is Tulu, Tulu Roberts, nigga. What the fuck is wrong with you? What's your nickname, nigga? Don't say Lulu or Tutu.
I will probably told you.
I hate that name, and you got the voice that go with it too. Tolu, voice ass Tolu, and you sitting with a Ralph and a Brian and a Jimmy, and this nigga's Tolu, the great warrior. that works at a law firm. Tolu and Associates. Nigga.
The cruel twist of Patrice's whole career is like if he were alive today and that were filmed and edited, which it probably would have been, that is a clip that could have had 3 million views, just about how the algorithm works now and everything like that. And therefore, Patrice probably wouldn't have participated in it. Like, he has some of the best crowd work ever, and crowd work is massive now. And if he were alive today, because of who else is successful doing that, he just probably wouldn't have done it. You know, that's like the tough thing about saying like, oh, Patrice would have been massive if he were alive today. It's like there's certain things that got popular enough that he just would have been like, I don't want to be Matt Rife, you know?
I would love to see him deal with Matt Rife.
Well, but that's the interesting thing about Patrice is like he never hated he always defended Dane Cook because he was like the reaction to Dane Cook was weirder to him than the guy. Oh, I mean, he came up with Dane Cook and knew him personally, so it's probably a little different. But like the reaction to Dane, the bitterness, and he talked to Marin about this. Like the bitterness and anger around Dane Cook was weirder to him. So like I said, he's one of those guys where like we can predict how he would have reacted to something, but we're probably wrong.
It's always just one of those like you might not like his comedy, but just listen when he does it. It works, you know.
I guess so. Yeah.
Next, we have white women.
Yeah, this is like Patrice had this where like he would get into subjects where it's like, you know, typical like Def Jam comedy topics, but he did it in such a unique and insightful and different way than anyone else would ever do it.
I always wonder why black women get mad when they see black men with white women, man. They get pissed. Maybe not so much, but work with me. Don't be unreasonable. I'm not making this up from me. I'm making it up from your reaction. So you may not, but let's be, you know. And the big reason is, look, white women are just more pleasant. On the front end, just straight up out the box. Hi, how are you? It's a weird thing, like shit. You say hi to a black woman, she'll call you a faggot in your face. Hi, how you doing? How you doing? What's that old faggot ass shit? You ain't gonna get no pussy like that saying hi, nigga. Pussy ass nigga, hello. What's that for? I'm gonna take my pants off now, nigga.
I always wonder how Patrice would have been a few years later, because like we were on the cusp when he recorded this. We're on the cusp of an era where like white people would be afraid to laugh at that. But if you're sitting in that crowd, I feel like it would be impossible not to. You know, like that's how engaging and charming he was with that stuff. Where I can't imagine and like I said, that's what I like about the way the crowd is mic'd in this album also. It feels impossible not to be laughing at that stuff if you were in that room.
Well, they wouldn't laugh if it was Bill Burr saying the exact same thing.
I guess so, yeah, right. They cross their arm. But I think Burr has that a little bit too, where like that's kind of Burr's whole formula is starting a topic that you're clearly not supposed to be laughing. You're like, oh, well, I know I've been programmed by society to disagree with this. And then by the end, you're like, okay, that's pretty fucking funny.
But next, we're going to have him talk about black women.
All right, let's hear this.
I mean, black women are amazing. I'm going to tell you what, if you need to get money back or refund, you better get yourself a black bitch, nigga, because she'll get a refund. I went in AT&T with a phone I dropped in the toilet. My bitch was back there like, hold on, let me talk to this guy. Hey, man, I dropped my phone in the toilet. I just want a replacement phone. And he's like, well, I can't do it. I had to put a hood on her head because she's back there like, I'm like, look, man, all I take it refurbished, nigga. Sir, we cannot give you any phone. If you drop it in the toilet, we are not responsible. You got one more motherfucking chance, man. Sir, I'm sorry. Okay. This bitch come back with 5 phones, and I don't have to pay the bill no more. This nigga is in the back, fetaled up, crying. I told you, motherfucker, I wanted a refurbished replacement phone, asshole.
It is like, I've heard on 10 million different podcasts, comics talk about the differences between like black rooms and white rooms, like urban rooms and just whatever, generic white rooms. And like comics would talk about like a white guy talking about having to perform in a black room. They would always talk about being very difficult. And like I always use Def Jam as the basis of that because it's just the most mainstream version of a quote black room. And what Patrice would do that I always found amazing is like, and maybe part of this is because like all his promotion was done to a white audience on Opie and Anthony. So he was able to like adapt to that. But he would talk about topics that you would hear discussed on Def Jam. Like it almost became a parody of Def Jam to be like, white people are like this and black people are like this. And just different versions of that. Patrice was able to like slow it down and relate it in a way where you're like, oh, that is interesting and it appeals to everyone, even though he might be talking down to white people. Or I don't know if you noticed this about Patrice. Once in a while, he speaks ill of us. And yet, like, you can listen to that and find that funny and relatable, and you're like, I totally get what he's talking about.
But we are here, the almighty closer.
Oh, already? Boy, that flew by. There's a lot I cut out, but mostly because of just like timing and pacing of the jokes. They would have been long clips. But there's a lot in between our last clip and the closer here that would definitely be like, I think people would have tried to go after Patrice if he got big enough to call him a sexist and say all these horrible things about him. But like, if you listen in the room, there are women in this audience, and he is crushing, saying like blatantly sexist things about how a woman should serve their man and all this shit. But he presents it in a way where you're like, well, he's kidding. I don't know how he conducts himself in his real life. Maybe he's an asshole. But in this context, he is clearly joking. And he had an ability, like I said, much like Burr, he had an ability to present topics in that way. But let's hear his closer here.
Clean, man. That's just clean down there. It's right there. And I'm at the age where I know the difference between something stink and something that's smelly. It's 2 different things. Stink is like, what the fuck is wrong with you, bitch? Your asshole stink. And I've never known a woman with her asshole stunk. And I'm like, get the fuck up. Get the fuck out of here because your asshole stinks.
It's what I love about Patrice's material. It's like if you made a character that you forced like Jerry Seinfeld to do a Def Jam set on eating pussy. Where it's like he's like stink versus smell, something stink, something smell, but he does it in like a Patrice way, you know?
Yeah.
Smelly is different. Smell is like, you know. She must have been roller skating or something. Maybe she was working late and her asshole is a little sweaty. I'm in there. Don't worry about it. It's that close to the vagina, inside and out. Here's how close it is in. You ever put your finger in the asshole and your thumb in the vagina? You can touch your fingers. That's how it's just a little piece of aluminum foil that separates the asshole from the vagina. If you get in far enough, you can snap your fingers and we go, shut. Oh, that's fucking dirty, bitch. That's dirty. Dirty. Hey, I gotta go, man. Y'all take care of yourself. I appreciate it. Hey, guys, thank you.
That's how he ends.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's crazy. I love, and that's what I think it's truly a special, or in this case, album worthy. But like when you've ended your set and the crowd hasn't caught their breath from laughing,
Right.
like those to me are the greatest specials of all time. Like I think now I've noticed a lot of specials end on like some callback or something where it's like, oh yeah, I see what you did there. Where like Patrice had this crowd fucking like going crazy for an hour. It truly was like a special and album worthy. I know I started this by saying like I don't know if Patrice wanted this released. We'll never truly know that, I guess. But regardless, it is definitely worth listening to if you've never checked it out, because I think it's an amazing piece of work and definitely one of the best albums released in the last 20 years for sure. So check out Mr. P if you haven't already in its entirety. Like I said, I really love it, and if you like Elephant in the Room, I think it holds up to that standard. So rest in peace to the great Patrice O'Neal. Obviously, these times could have benefited from a voice like that, but we love Patrice here. That's why we do yearly episodes about him. And if you love Patrice, what you should do is go to blindmike.net and really show your support wherever you get podcasts, all of our links, and even because I assume the Patrice O'Neal benefit at this point has the same impact on Patrice's legacy. You can either give to that every year or become a patron on Patreon or YouTube. Become a member for as little as $5 a month. Patrice gets the exact same value out of it. So do whatever you see fit. Like, subscribe, comment, give us a 5-star review wherever you get this podcast. We appreciate it. And if you want to support Craig, who is staunchly against Patrice and all of his kind, if you're more of that ilk, go to verygoodshow.org. And he rebuts a lot of Patrice's arguments about race.
No. No.
He says, reparations, I'll tell you what we should be doing with them. So verygoodshow.org is where you can get that kind of rhetoric, if that's more your alley.
That's false. It's a hoax.
Well, I don't know. Guys, go there and find out, will you? Maybe they've lightened up over the years. Go inspect for me. And that's it from us. We will talk to you guys next time on Why Are You Laughing?
It's going to be Patrice O'Neal warning.
Man, this is all spoken. Man, you know I've been enjoying things that kings and queens will never have. In fact, kings and queens can never get. And they don't even know about it. In good times, great googly moogly. Great googly moogly. I have had my fun. If I never get well no more, I have had my fun. If I never get well no more. Oh yeah, I'm going down slow. Now, look at here. I did not say I was a millionaire, but I said I've spent more money than a millionaire. Because if I had kept all my money that I already spent, I would have been a millionaire a long time ago. And women, ooh, women, great googly moogly. Please write my mama. Tell her the shape I'm in. Please write my mama. Tell her the shape I'm in. Tell her to pray for me. my sin.
God damn. That's oh yeah.
That's Hollywood. You gotta listen to Hollywood though, man.
Zip it up and zip it out.